Hello, this is Brian. Today is Tuesday, October 11th, 2022. I'm here along the East Side Trail in Cuyamaca, Rancho State Park, and it's time for a Spotlight on Shrubs video. Well, today's focus is going to look kind of familiar or similar to another Spotlight I did back in early August, but here you have it. This is another type of our California buckwheat. This is the Mojave Buckwheat. So this is Eriogonum fasciculatum variety polifolium. Mojave Buckwheat, just like our regular California buckwheat, this is a variety thereof, by the way. It is a member of the buckwheat slash knotweed family, the Polygonaceae. And what we have here is typically a small, sometimes medium-sized shrub, typically fairly low-growing. This is actually one of the taller specimens I've seen. And it is just another part of our floral diversity here. So, the previous video I did on California buckwheat was the Coastal California Buckwheat, Eriogonum fasciculatum variety fasciculatum, which tends to be more of a medium green color, whereas Eriogonum fasciculatum variety polifolium tends to have more of a grayish color, grayish overtone in the foliage. So on the leafy and the leafy texture here, you can see kind of has more of a bluish grayish hue to it. And that's due to the whitish hairs that are pretty prevalent on the upper side of the leaves. The underside of the leaves are even more prevalently hairy, with, as you can see here, there's more of a whitish underneath. So there's more tomentum underneath, which is hairiness or pubescence. So the Mojave buckwheat implies that it grows in drier places, sometimes near the desert, but it also grows higher up in the mountains. I would say here we're between 3,900 and 4,000 feet elevation, although this will grow significantly higher than that, up to and over 6,000 feet in our mountains. And it's quite widespread from the hottest inland foothills and lower mountains, but especially from the mountain crests east towards the desert. So what you'll also notice is, just like with the Coastal California buckwheat, even though we're more into fall right now, we still have some flowers. Sometimes the flower season can last quite long on these buckwheats. Again, whitish to sometimes slightly pinkish tinged flowers that come in these umbels, or these umbrella-like clusters, and then they senesce into these brownish seed heads right here, as you can see as we go into fall. So this one has a little bit of some leftover blossom, and it's senesced seed heads. Senesced means it's grown old, and usually when it comes to flower heads, that means it's going from flower into seed. So you can see here, it is a quite woody shrub. It's probably one of the more woody varieties of Eriogonum fasciculatum. It can be upright or very low growing, kind of with a brownish bark, especially higher up on the twigs. And then there's a little bit of a furrowing in the bark as well. As you can kind of see here, the bark turns a little more grayish, still with some brownish hues, as you get towards the multi-trunked base of the plant. And like on California buckwheat, there is some revolute edges of the leaves, meaning the leaves kind of curl under a little bit, though it's not often quite as prevalent as it is in the other buckwheats, and the leaves tend to be a little bit longer. The leaves on Eriogonum fasciculatum variety polifolium tend to be a little bit longer, a little bit larger, and again, kind of with that grayish cast for the most part. Some of these in the shade tend to be a little greener. So why the polymorphism? Why the differences in color depending on where it's growing? Well, it's the environment in which it's growing. The ones in the shade are not as fully exposed to the desiccating effects of the sun, so they tend to stay greener. The ones that are more out in the sun tend to be grayer, and that's because they have more prominent hairiness on the upper side of the leaves. So the ones growing out in the sun that are more hairy or hairier, they're hairier and more grayish colored, is because the effects of the sun obviously evaporates and pulls moisture out of the leaves through transpiration, and the plant breathes it out through transpiration. So the hairs will act as a layer of defense to prevent the leaves from overly drying out. So in a way, the fuzziness of the leaves kind of shades the surface of the leaves to prevent excessive moisture loss. Hence why a lot of these shrubs here in dry Southern California have a grayish color to them. Also, the light color also reflects a nice chunk of that sun back. So it takes what it needs for photosynthesis and reflects back the excess amount. And that's a very common adaptation. You know how many, I don't know how many of you have seen a lot of my other spotlight videos, especially when I'm talking about some plant with hairy grayish green leaves. But the theme is the same as you go along. The dry desiccating effects of the sun are stymied a little bit by the hairs, which trap a humid layer above the leaves. And that's how a lot of these plants can survive out here, where it could be dry for months and months and months on end. And when the rainy season comes, it's not always reliable. So here you have it. Eriogonum fasciculatum variety polifolium, the Mojave Buckwheat. The furthest inland, hottest temperatures and coldest temperatures of the Eriogonum fasciculatum complex. There you have it. The beautiful Mojave Buckwheat. That was another Spotlight episode with Brian. I hope you found that informative and helping to determine what species we find out here while hiking. Thanks for watching my Spotlight on shrubs, and I will see you on another episode.